a great turnout, and it seemed like it went pretty well last time. Sorry, I'm just getting like, it's weird. During this, I've never felt so popular. So many people just like emailing me and texting, and that's one thing. I still want that to end, actually. So that's. But anyway, thanks for signing up. I think we're gonna go. So I'll toss it over to Peter, who's our chair. I'm the district manager at CB6, Mike Rasio, but I think my name is underneath me. And then Brad, whose staff was really tremendous in helping us set this up for the second straight month, specifically Megan Flynn, but also his whole staff that is helping out here. So I'm going to toss it over to Peter, and then to Brad, and then to our Attorney General, followed by Scott, our New York City Comptroller.
Thank you all for joining us. We truly appreciate it. We're sorry that this is the way it has to be, but our goal here is to provide you with the best possible information we can, with an array of wonderful guests, Tish and Scott and others. So we're going to do that. I hope everyone is staying safe, keeping their families safe, at least taking an opportunity to go out for the occasional walk. On Sunday, I went to Greenwood Cemetery, which I recommend tremendously if you've never walked through there. It is peaceful and wonderful and great greenery and flowers, and as long as you follow their rules, which are not really very burdensome, but don't let the children climb trees, don't steal flowers from other graves, and be respectful of the fact that this is a cemetery and not a park. Although in its early days, before the building of Prospect Park, that's where people in Brooklyn took their leisure. They took picnics and everything like that in the early and mid 1800s to Greenwood Cemetery. The community board has been doing what it can to advocate for your interests. We sent an email to the Department of Education and to the mayor about making sure that the schools are cleaned appropriately, especially before students and staff and anyone else uses them. We've also made sure that we can have as much local input as possible into what streets are open for walking. So, if there's an issue that you think that the community board should take a position on, I invite you to contact Mike, and we'll discuss it, and we'll do the very best we can to advocate on your behalf. So again, stay safe, everyone. Try and get out and at least get some fresh air and exercise while remaining socially distant, and let us know if there's anything that we can do for you to help make your life easier. And I'll come back at the end to say goodbye, but otherwise, we're going to pass it off to Brad and some of our other special guests.
So good evening, this is Councilmember Brad Lander. I will save my city council report for later in the meeting. We got a lot going on in the council. We had our budget hearing and a bunch of legislative hearings for small business and workers' rights and that open streets program that Peter just mentioned. But that'll come later in the meeting. We've got some amazing special guests. So I'm just saying a word of kind of welcome as maybe like the host tonight. This is my Zoom room. So it's like if we were in one of Anita's schools and the principal was giving you the welcome to the school before the meeting started. I'm honored, and I just want to say thank you again to both Megan Flynn, who's here, and Naomi Dan, who has provided so much tech support as we're trying to move into this, so weird world and do democracy in ways we never ever thought we would have to do it before. But on the upside, we rarely get the New York State Attorney General, who's busy and running around the state, able to join us for a Community Board 6 meeting. She's no stranger to Community Board 6, but it's a big state. And there's a lot of downsides to the pandemic and a lot of downsides to trying to do democracy on video conference. But at least one upside is we got more people on this call than we often have. People really recognize what's important. We've got some amazing citywide leaders and folks like Scott Stringer, who's going to be joining us, and obviously some truly amazing statewide leaders. And it is just a delight to have New York State Attorney General Tish James here with us. I was just mentioning that she's helped push Zoom to improve its security and privacy protocols, and they haven't quite gotten to her standards yet. But at least they're back in the New York City schools, and I feel like good enough for Community Board 6. So welcome to our Zoom room. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Peter. And thank you, Tish.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Kevin. I see Kevin Parker in there somewhere. Listen, I really haven't been running around the state, just teleconferences every day, conversations with the governor every morning on different issues, crafting executive orders, defending executive orders, going after businesses that are not essential, that remain open, and going after pranksters and scammers and bottom feeders. But the bottom line is that communities are stronger when they stick together, especially during these trying times. And listen, when the skies are the darkest, as they are right now, that's when stars shine the brightest. And clearly all of you, all of us working together, we're gonna come out of this on the other side stronger and more united than ever before. But let me tell you a little bit about what our office has been doing. Just touch on a couple of areas because you have a stellar lineup here this evening. And again, it really speaks to Community Board 6 and to your strength and to your power and to your sense of community. We have been dealing with, obviously, individuals who unfortunately are preying upon the anxiety and the fears of countless number of individuals who are engaging in price gouging. And what I've noticed is that from the beginning of this scam, the price gouging primarily focused on, health products, the masks and the sanitizers. We saw a lot of complaints at the beginning of this pandemic related to price gouging in that particular area. Now what we are seeing is it's transitioned somewhat, and what we are seeing is price gouging as it relates to food products, eggs in particular. And we're seeing a scarcity of meat products. And that is primarily due to, as you know, the supply chain and the fact that meat packaging companies in the South, a number of them have closed down. And so if price gouging is a subjective term. You know it when you see it, when prices unfortunately increase exorbitantly. And so it's important that you reach out to us. We are investigating, again, the food chain to determine whether or not individuals are in fact engaging in price gouging. In addition to that, what we are seeing both online and face-to-face are individuals with all kind of fake products, medicines, and cures all of a sudden to COVID-19. I want all of you to know that the FDA has not approved any at-home test, no treatment, no cure, or nothing, or cream for the prevention of or the cure of COVID-19. And so I urge all of you to reach out to our office. And they're trying to, again, prey upon the anxiety and the fears of countless individuals who unfortunately are paralyzed by all that is happening. We all know that small businesses are the backbone of our economy. We've been working with Congress and with regards to the Paycheck Protection Plan, making sure that small business, women-owned business, minority-owned business, local businesses take advantage of this loan program as opposed to large businesses, and particularly businesses with connections, and businesses with lobbyists, and businesses with a conflict. And so we are working with Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez, who sits on the subcommittee, as well as Congresswoman Maloney, as we monitor and provide some sort of oversight with respect to this Paycheck Protection Program. We know that there have been many issues with this program, and unfortunately, we know that fraudsters are taking advantage of the confusion. So we are also helping to protect small businesses. We also know that some small businesses are taking advantage or unfortunately being taken advantage by these payday lenders. And so we urge small businesses not to take advantage of these payday lenders who are charging exorbitant interest rates, but go to small credit unions and small banks, federally chartered banks, to seek to take advantage of this program. We have been calling upon the mortgage service providers to offer immediate and long-term relief to all New York homeowners. I'm happy to report that Democrats right now are in a discussion led by Congresswoman Maxine Waters to provide some relief to tenants. They're urging and they're coming together around a package that would include some relief for tenants who unfortunately are not in a position to pay their rent, and for small landlords. We're hoping and praying that they are successful, because we do know that again, working with the governor of the state of New York, he issued an executive order, and right now he has stayed evictions for 90 days. When that executive order is lifted, my fear is that landlords will go to court, and will seek judgments of eviction. And so what we need to do is provide them with some financial assistance on the federal level. And I'm hoping that our congressional delegation, I've spoken to all of most of the members of the congressional delegation here in New York who support relief for tenants and for small homeowners. We hope that they're successful in this next iteration of stimulus funding. As most of you know, we've issued guidance letters to all creditors, hands off the stimulus money. It cannot be garnished. It's important that individuals understand that stimulus money cannot be garnished by creditors. And so if they attempt to garnish your funds, it is illegal. Please reach out to our office. We've issued official guidance to New York State banking institution, creditors, debt collectors, making clear that stimulus payments cannot be garnished. We've called again on mortgage service providers to provide relief to homeowners struggling to make payments in the midst of the pandemic. We have also, in the Office of Attorney General, we have suspended the collection of state student loan debt and state medical debt. When individuals heard this, they reached out to me and they thought it was all medical debt and all student loans. No, it's just state-owned state-owned debt related to student loans as well as to medical debt from our state facilities. We have suspended any collection, and so we just wanted to provide some relief to individuals during this time of this time of crisis. We fielded thousands of complaints from employees about inadequate safety protections. As you know, we're looking at Amazon. Unfortunately, an Amazon worker died yesterday. A number of whistleblowers were fired. We are conducting an investigation into Amazon and to other businesses, again, about inadequate safety protections for essential workers and those who serve us each and every day on the front line. The good news is that the vast majority of companies are cooperating with us. It's amazing. When we call, they cooperate. And so we've not had to go to court to get temporary restraining orders in that regard. We do know that, unfortunately, what we all know is true is that this pandemic has revealed fault lines that fall along racial lines and economic lines. And that's why we've called for expanded treatment, expanded hospital capacity, and rapid testing, and hopefully expanded treatment. And so all throughout the state of New York, we've been working with a coalition of elected officials to expand testing in communities which unfortunately have had a disparate, who have been impacted in a dramatic way along racial and economic lines. We've also urged them to expand language access along in those hotspots all throughout the state of New York. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of bias-related incidents against our Asian brothers and sisters. Hate will not be tolerated, not only in Brooklyn, but anywhere throughout the state of New York. Hate has no place in our society, and anyone who is being victimized by a bias incident, who's been victimized by a bias incident, please reach out to our office for a full investigation. We must protect vulnerable communities during this period of time. We must stand up and stand with our Asian brothers and sisters and let them know that they are not alone. We are also in court fighting to halt the implementation of the public charge rule, which would deny immigrants assistance. It's basically a wealth tax, a wealth test that this administration has imposed upon immigrants, and if immigrants rely upon some sort of public benefit, they would be denied a green card. And so we are currently in federal court and district court urging the judge to halt the implementation of that public charge rule, which I view as nothing more than a wealth test. As you know, nursing homes. Yeah, we've seen a lot of death and a lot of the infection rate continues to go up. And so the governor has appointed me as, and with the Department of Health, we are investigating nursing homes all throughout the state of New York. We will be issuing a report. We have urged that all nursing homes have access to PPE, that everyone get tested, including residents and staff, that any positive COVID patients be isolated from non-COVID positive individuals, that we have disease infection control measures in place, and my battery is going low. And we continue to ensure that they had adequate staffing, which is absolutely critically important. Prior to this focus on nursing homes, most nursing homes did not have adequate staff. And it's unfortunate that the Department of Health was allowing positive COVID patients to be transferred into nursing homes. And so nursing homes have become petri dishes. And you have these fragile individuals who unfortunately were not with loved ones, who unfortunately are dying. And it just, anyway. We will investigate and we'll get to the bottom of this, and we will be issuing a report. But most importantly, we're going to investigate nursing homes each and every day. I have an entire team of investigators and attorneys working on nursing homes with the Department of Health. We have also issued guidance letters on funeral homes as well as crematories. As you know, we saw that horrible incident in Brooklyn where 60 bodies were piled up in a unrefrigerated U-Haul truck. And so now individuals can have their loved ones, funeral homes from outside the state of New York can now come into New York, and individuals can funeralize their loved ones and have them cremated in a respectful and a timely manner. And lastly, we've been working with online retail, Amazon, Google, Facebook, eBay, and others, demanding that they remove items due to price gouging and items that unfortunately falsely are marketed as cures to coronavirus. These are just some of the actions that we have been taking. Even though we're working remotely from home, we've got a full-fledged focus on all of the issues in the state of New York. I want to thank Community Board 6 for allowing me to say a few words to all of you, and I appreciate all the work that you are doing.
Thank you so much for joining us, Attorney General.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tish.
I don't know if I don't unmute. Okay. No, so I could be heard. Okay. Next, I think we're going to go to.
Mike, we have one question in the chat for the
sorry.
Attorney General. Mike's going to MC, but I'm watching the chat. For
Yeah,
questions.
no, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Madam AG, this question about the election and what's the decision on the primary and what people should expect there.
Yeah, so as you know, yesterday, individuals who were on the ballot to serve as delegates won in court. They argued that it was a violation of their constitutional right to associate as well as their First Amendment right. That case, as you know, I represent the state of New York. We are filing an appeal. There'll be a determination at some point in time as to whether or not the presidential primary has been canceled in the state of New York. We do know that there are other primaries scheduled for June 23rd. I've advocated that we go to an absentee ballot system. The governor of the state of New York is mailing out absentee applications to all of us in the state of New York, but polls will be open on June 23rd for the local primary. We've got a primary for state senate, I believe, and that covers Community Board 6. But at this point in time, the presidential primary is off. We will see whether or not the district court decision is overturned by a higher court. And I have a responsibility and duty to defend the state of New York and to defend the Board of Elections.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think after that, we're going to go to, before the clapping starts, our New York City Comptroller, Scott Stringer. Thank you for joining us. This is your second appearance at CB6 during my tenure. The last time was in person, but.
I don't get clapping?
No, well, yes. There you go. Absolutely.
The whole city is going to clap for you.
It's always fun to follow the Attorney General, but as somebody who follows her work very closely, I think we really have her where we need her, and that's fighting for struggling New Yorkers. So I definitely want to do a clap to Tish James and all of the elected officials who are on. Look, I'm going to cut right to the chase because I see all the people who are going to speak tonight, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I did want to come on and just give everybody a sense of where we are economically in the city. About a month ago or so now, I said that we would lose some $6-7 billion in tax revenue at the beginning of this epidemic. And unfortunately, we have been fairly accurate in what we're facing. both in budget year 2020 and also next year in 2021. We crunched some numbers just yesterday, and we are now pretty sure that we're going to lose 900,000 jobs in the city, meaning people who had jobs pre-COVID, who now will lose their jobs by sometime in June. We calculate that based on the number of unemployment claims filed, which right now is 725,000. So we think, looking at the numbers, it will be close to 900,000. I also looked at where this virus has hit hardest, and we have to own up to the fact that this virus is very discriminatory. It does not treat everybody equally. It goes after the elderly. It goes after people with pre-existing conditions, people who suffer from diabetes and other comorbidities, and mostly this has impacted, not totally, but this has impacted communities of color, people in the Bronx and Brooklyn, especially hard. And that's a real conversation we have to have now and in the future, because we can no longer budget to totality, but we have to start measuring the success we have trying to eradicate these health disparities. It's very clear. The governor's asked me to take a look at hospitals, and we're doing that, but we're also looking at what the challenges to make this city whole. Some of you were around in the 1970s, some of you were around in 2008 during the financial collapse, some of you were around during Hurricane Sandy, and the way we were able to fix our budget hole was doing a number of different things, and that all has to be on the table. As far as I'm concerned, the state has a $13 billion budget, and to make matters worse, though Brian Kavanaugh and Joanne Simon are not with this, but the governor's proposal to cut spending will impact New York City another $3 billion. So a couple of things I just want to say to all of you. One, we also have to recognize that the federal stimulus has not been equal across the board. New York has the highest number of cases, and yet we have been shortchanged with the stimulus package. We get roughly from the feds $9,000 per corona case. The state of Montana gets $1.2 million per corona case. Even though we're at the epicenter, even though New York City sends $35 billion more to the federal government than we get back, $35 billion, we have been shortchanged. So the way we're going to come out of this ultimately is with a stimulus package that reflects state aid, local aid. A lot of people are rightly talking about the rights of frontline workers, the people who are struggling. And I do think that we have to set aside billions of dollars in this multiple $trillion-dollar packages that Congress is approving. And we do need to start a victims compensation fund, the same modeled after what happened after 9/11 for the cops and firefighters and first responders. We now have to include nurses and doctors, transit workers and teachers, all the people who sacrifice their lives to keep the rest of us safe. The delivery worker who comes to the door with a mask, you'll never even shake that person's hand. You can't even hand them a tip, so you have to include it. And that individual, some of them may not make it to the end of this, and we have to make sure their families are whole. And that is another part of this that I think New York City should lead on. For now, I think we have to be careful that when we think about how we balance the budget, it cannot be on the backs of the most vulnerable. We can't start with talking about furloughs and layoffs. We have to talk about outside contractors and efficiency and agencies, and we have to identify savings. I've said long to my friends on the council, you got to save some money in good times because you never know what comes our way. So now we know it has hit us, and we have to think strategically as thinking about the budget. So there's going to be some tough choices, but I do believe that we have to make sure our frontline workers are protected, our kids are protected. And then I think that as we reopen the economy, we also have to think about how we reimagine the city. And this is where brain power and community-based planning is really going to take hold. We've got to look at our streetscape, and we have to look at how we used to do things and realize that maybe it's time to just do things differently. We talked about health and social services in our communities that have struggled, but we also have to reimagine how people are going to get to work, how kids are going to get to school, how we're going to teach our children, how we're going to protect people, how testing is going to become, in the short term, a critical part of society. So I'm throwing a lot out there from an economic perspective because this is going to be probably the biggest challenge. Some people said, well, this is a lot bigger than the 2008 recession. And I could show you numbers where this dwarfs the city's fiscal crisis in the 70s. And you could really do some parallel between the Depression and where we are potentially. And this means that the way we used to think about governing, which is, well, throw money at something. If it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, we'll go do something else. We have no room for error. We have no room anymore. Every dollar has to be accounted for. And by that, I mean, if we're going to end homelessness and educate all our children and command a presence in all zip codes, wealthy zip codes, but poor zip codes and struggling communities, we're going to have to look at this budget and we're going to have to gear it to neighborhoods most in need. So that's what I wanted to come and say to all of you. Many of you don't need to hear this from me. You've been fighting this fight both on this community level and each and every one of you in city government with Mayor de Blasio, with Tish James, elected officials who are the best in the city. So I don't mean to tell you what that you already know, but I do think if you need more numbers from me on the budget, we are crunching very heavily, Gary, and others, so that we're happy to provide it. And Taika's on the phone, on the line, and she'll stay for the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Comptroller, very much. And Taika always does a very good job at these meetings.
Amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, he's back at his screen now. We were going to go sticking with the state and citywide theme. So now we're going to move over to Lincoln Ressler from the mayor's office. Lincoln, welcome to CB6 virtually.
Mike, thank you so much. And thank you, Peter. It's an honor to follow two of our best elected officials, Tish James and Scott Stringer. Thank you guys for joining us. As a former CB2 member in Brooklyn, I've always felt the healthy competition on the Better Brownstone Community Board, but it's an honor to be with you guys tonight. I was, until earlier this year, Deputy Chief of Staff to the Mayor. I think as Al Pacino famously said, just when you think you make it out, I had resigned. The COVID crisis happened and they pulled me back in. So I've been happily trying to help wherever I can in the face of this crisis, and had a chance to work with some of your great local elected officials like Joanne Simon and Brian Kavanaugh, Nydia Velasquez, Kevin Parker, Bobby Carroll, Brad Lander. You guys have some of the very best. So I just wanted to give a few quick updates from City Hall on some of the key items that we've been prioritizing. And I know I'm joined by a couple great colleagues from city government as well who can plug in on some more specifics. David Nussbaum and Julie Menon, thank you for joining us. So a few quick items. One, following up on an item that Tish mentioned, which are the tragedies that we've been facing in our nursing homes. Mayor de Blasio has made it a major priority to try to step in and provide support to nursing homes across New York City. This week alone, we are distributing 3 million pieces of PPE to nursing homes. And we are also providing staff to nursing homes across the 5 boroughs. I think we were all shocked by the tragedy at Cobble Hill Nursing Home, and Assemblymember Simon and Congresswoman Velasquez have been following up with me regularly on what's going on there and how we can help. And I'm proud to report to CB6 today that we've just signed a contract with Cobble Hill Nursing Home that will provide 40 additional clinical staff to that nursing home to fill all of their needs, overnight shifts, et cetera, to make sure that they have the support they need to weather this crisis. Some other key updates. The mayor announced we're distributing 7.5 million masks across the 5 boroughs, including distributing out of Prospect Park and other locations around CB6. Check nyc.gov for more details. Wanted to share some updates on the food front. We are now distributing approximately 1 million meals a day. You can go to 500 different schools in New York City and pick up 3 meals for free. So almost every other school building in New York City you can now go to get breakfast, lunch, and dinner, child, adult, anybody, no cost. And we're delivering almost 500,000 meals to people's homes. So for homebound seniors and others, we're making sure that they have what they need. You can call 311 to sign up if you need it. And I'm really excited that locally in CB6, we've been partnering with CB6 member Joanne Brown to distribute food directly to Warren Street houses. And if folks in Wyckoff or Gowanus or Red Hook houses or other developments in need across CB6 need large-scale deliveries of pantry bags, we can bring that to your doorstep, and we'll work with you to hopefully get it distributed to the families in need or seniors in need in the developments. Because it's Eric McClure's world and we're just all living in it, I wanted to give some updates on open streets. I think, as everybody hopefully knows, we have the mayor has announced that we're going to be doing 100 miles of open streets across the 5 boroughs eventually. We started modestly, so I think we're at 9 total miles that we've announced, including Prospect Park West. See you later, Controller Stringer.
I got to go to another meeting, sort of, in the kitchen. Bye.
Always good to see you.
Thanks, Lincoln.
So Prospect Park West from Garfield to 3rd is closed. We just announced today a couple streets just outside of CB6 in downtown Brooklyn. Lawrence and Willoughby are going to be closed as well. If you have additional suggestions, we'd love to take them. We're actively looking to identify additional streets for closure for pedestrians. And then the last piece I just wanted to share is, as we look toward the next phase of fighting this virus, the key lens that the mayor has prioritized for all of us at City Hall is how do we reduce the rate of transmission? And to go further, we need to dramatically increase, to further reduce the rate of transmission, we need to dramatically increase the availability of community testing. We're about 10,000 tests a day that we're doing in the city. We need to, and we have plans to increase that by many times over in the weeks ahead. And we're going to build out, and the state's doing the same, large contact tracing operations, so that when Mike, or hopefully not Mike, tests positive, we're reaching out to him the next day as the positive test comes through, identifying all of his close contacts, and then hopefully providing some meaningful opportunities to make it easier for him to quarantine or isolate at home, or even in a hotel. So that's the next phase for us. Test and trace and providing the appropriate care is how we're going to get through this and reduce the rate of transmission sufficiently to be able to fully reopen our society. I am happy to try and answer a couple questions. I've got a 7 o'clock that I think I'm a little late for too, but if I can follow up, I'll leave my contact information and make sure that the right city agencies get back to anybody with any questions, and really want to thank Mike and Peter and the whole CB6 team for letting me join today.
Thanks so much, Lincoln. Appreciate it. I don't know how many questions there are because I've been fielding like 8 million text messages in the last minute. But we're going to go we're going to shift over to the state a little bit. I know Bobby is a busy guy, and my friend Bobby is up next. I know there's some interesting stuff he's working on with legislation for insurance protections and not insurance protections. I phrased that incorrectly. But it's your floor, Bobby.
Good evening, CB6. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Peter, the whole board, for bringing us back together. I don't want to reiterate all of the smart, good things that the mayor's office, the attorney general, the comptroller are doing, and my other colleagues. One of the things I wanted to highlight tonight is something that we've been working on in the state legislature, which is business interruption insurance. As we start to flatten this curve and hopefully look towards how do we reopen New York, one of the most important things that we're going to need is to assist our small businesses, our nonprofits. And one of those ways is to get them working capital. Even if it were safe to open these businesses tomorrow, many would not be able to because they don't have that capital. But of course, so many of these businesses for years have been paying business interruption insurance premiums, thousands and thousands of dollars every single year, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars every single year. And all of their claims for business interruption insurance across the entire country so far have been rejected. This is unconscionable, and it must stop. the state legislature does have the authority to step in and look at these contracts and come out in favor of small businesses that didn't have equal bargaining power when they entered into these contracts, did not understand that in contracts that are 200-300 pages long, that 2 or 3 sentences were slipped in the year 2004 that excluded viruses, and that will be interpreted to exclude this pandemic. If we don't do this and we don't try to save our small businesses, the economic outlook that Comptroller Stringer was mentioning will become so much more grim, because of course most New Yorkers are employed by small businesses, and these businesses are the bedrocks of our communities, and one of the reasons why we all want to live here in New York and makes our city so great and so interesting. So it's something that we've spent a tremendous amount of time. The other thing that we spend a tremendous amount of time every single day is the Department of Labor. For whatever reason, the governor refuses to say that it will take more than 72 hours to get a call back, so I'll say it. It will take more than 72 hours for the Department of Labor to call you back, especially if you are looking for pandemic unemployment insurance, if you're a gig worker, if you're somebody that doesn't just have a straight W-2. Please feel free to reach out to my office. I'm sure my other colleagues in state and city government are also constantly talking to their liaisons at the Department of Labor, their liaisons with the governor's office. We are trying valiantly to get every person's claim filed, completed, so you can start receiving those checks. Please do have patience, but please, if you are at your wit's end, please feel free to reach out to my office at carolr@nyassembly.gov. And the final note I want to just make is that there is so much great work of so many places in my district that are doing work to help feed hungry families. I want to highlight just 2 of them here. I was there on Coney Island Avenue outside of CB6 at Copo that is feeding thousands and thousands of families every single day. Please feel free to reach out to my office if you have issues feeding your family. Our public schools are great, but we have some great nonprofits as well. So thank you, everyone, and hopefully we'll all get to see everyone in person sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks, Bobby. I think I know that Assemblymember Tremaine Wright had jumped on just to say hello very briefly, is my understanding. She was just added as a panelist. I don't know if she's still on mute though.
Yeah, unmute yourself.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, everyone. Good evening. CB6, this is Assemblymember Tremaine Wright. I just wanted to pop in very briefly, say good evening, reach out to everyone. I'm glad to see such a wonderful showing for this community board meeting. I too come from community board. I spent about 14 years on community board 3. So I truly appreciate the value of community input in all of the decisions that we make here in this city. My office, similar to Member Carol, is working on a lot of unemployment claims. We are available to assist any way possible. We're also working very diligently to make sure that our small businesses have a way to access the funds that are available. We're working on a grant program with one of our local not-for-profits, so please reach out if you have any concerns. And thank you very much. I hope that everyone has an opportunity to pause a little bit, reflect, and just take care of themselves, because these are really trying and stressful times. And I invite you all to participate in our breathing meditation. It's 15 minutes every Friday at noon. It's just a moment to be very deliberate about taking care of ourselves. So thank you, CB6.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think next we were going to go to another state elected official. I know that I can't see everyone, but I know that Senator Kavanaugh is on the line.
I am.
Our housing chair.
Great. Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief, and appreciate, I know a lot of people here to speak, but first of all, thank you for having this forum. It's terrific to see everybody. Our office has been, actively engaging in all the services people have been talking about. I do emphasize Bobby Carroll's point. If you are having trouble with unemployment insurance, we do have a kind of more direct line to address that. We've also pushed for the state to make a lot of changes to the system to make it easier and more efficient. And there's a couple of documents on our website that lay out our proposals to smooth that out even further. But we also can intervene and try to get you the resources as soon as possible. We also been working on, all the other sort of basic needs of people, PPE and food and, the sanitizer and all the things people never understood the importance of until this crisis. We were, the Attorney General mentioned the nursing home situation. We were, some of us at Cobble Hill Health Center, both to discuss the situation there and to see what we could do to assist. We have been able to provide them additional PPP and other equipment, PPE rather, and other equipment, and where that's a continuing effort to make sure that the resources are there. Obviously, I think there's also this inquiry, which is really nationwide and but certainly statewide, about what has gone wrong in the nursing homes and what can be done differently, so we can reduce the horrible rate of fatality we've had in those particular places. So it was mentioned on the housing charges. I do want to focus on that in particular for a minute. We have been working, the Attorney General mentioned there's a 90-day moratorium on evictions. There is a similar provision in place at the federal and the state level for mortgages. You can't be, banks, lenders can't take adverse action against you because you failed to pay mortgage during a set period. It's actually a 90-day period in New York and a 120-day period at the federal level. And the eviction moratorium is a complete moratorium. People can't begin cases, they can't enforce eviction orders. But those periods will end eventually. I would expect that they will be extended. The mortgage moratorium, the eviction moratorium is 90 days and will expire in mid-June. I would expect that, given where we are in this crisis, in the economic crisis as well as the public health crisis, that'll get extended at some point. But to address the question of what happens next, we are working on proposals to ensure that that rent can get paid. That will depend on resources from the federal government. So I worked with colleagues, many of whom are on this phone today, on this meeting today, to get a request to Congress to provide $100 billion nationally in the next stimulus package toward housing, at least $10 billion of that to New York. Several of our colleagues at the congressional level have joined that. And in fact, some members of Congress are pushing for much larger amounts of money to be in the stimulus. So I think it's important to get that money, but it's also important to be prepared to spend it. So we've developed a program. It's ensconced in a bill called Senate Bill S 8140A, and the goal is to create a program that will basically pay the rent that people can't pay during this period. With respect to mortgages, we have a proposal. Most mortgages are not within the jurisdiction of the state. So if a mortgage was either initiated by a state chartered bank, or in some cases if it's serviced by a state entity, we can address this, but we're working with members of Congress on this as well. The state proposal would be to extend the forbearance period to 6 months, and then with an option to extend it another 6 months if they're at the request of the borrower, if there's continuing hardship. And the mortgage payments that would be due during that period could be delayed to the end of the mortgage rather than to the end of that period. So if you fail to pay 6 months during this period and your mortgage expires in January 2030, it would now be extended to July 2030 without any penalties or interest accruing during this period. We announced that a few weeks ago with Kathleen Rice, the Congress member from Long Island, who is proposing the same provisions at the federal level. So we think between those two measures, we would get at all mortgages. Again, we're hoping to move that forward legislatively. I think we're also very cognizant that the homeless situation, which was already a crisis throughout our city, has been exacerbated by the pandemic. In a world where you're trying to keep people distant, where you're trying to keep people be able to wash their hands and do all the other things we're all trying to do routinely. It's very problematic to have so many people living in congregate settings, living in public spaces in some cases. So I think part of that package ought to be addressing both additional services for people in shelter so that we can get people into places where they can be isolated. And the city's already doing some work to expand the use of hotel rooms rather than congregate settings. So we need to do that. And then we also need to have a much bigger commitment to permanent housing for homeless families. I think I'll stop there. Obviously, I'm happy to take questions, but I know you have a busy agenda tonight as well.
Sorry, Senator. My understanding is that there were some questions directed towards you, Megan.
I'm trying to eyeball the chat as well, but
okay, yeah, something about something about.
There's a question, Senator, in the Q&A for you and for Assemblymember Simon. Since you both passed the ERPO gun sense bill, if there's anything that can be done to further discourage COVID-related gun purchasing and hoarding.
That I'll confess that's a new one. Joanne, and I have worked very hard on gun violence prevention, and I work on that issue nationally as chair of something called American State Legislators for Gun Violence Prevention. It's a 50-state organization working in every state. The gun laws in New York we've strengthened them dramatically in the last couple of years. They are now among the strongest laws in the country. We're like in, I think, fourth is the assessment of how strong our gun laws relative to other states. And we have the third lowest rate of gun-related death in America per capita. But I don't. If people have a right to buy guns in New York, and they have to have a permit specific to a handgun. That is also true of long guns, of rifles and shotguns and other such things in New York City, but not in other parts of the state. So I'm not sure what a provision that says, during a pandemic, you can't buy so many guns. I'm not sure what that would look like. But I guess I'll talk about it some more and see if folks are thinking about that either elsewhere in the country or in New York. Again, I would just note that in many parts of the country, you can buy and sell unlimited guns with very few restrictions, including no background checks still in most states. So we are a relatively restrictive state, but I haven't heard anybody talking about a specific limitation because of the pandemic.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. So I think next we're going to go Joanne, followed by Brad, and then, sorry, I'm still getting the list, but yeah. So Assemblymember Simon, thank you.
Hi, thank you. I just took a little frolicking detour to be on a Zoom happy birthday with a colleague. So, we're just juggling all the Zooms here. We're just Zooming everywhere. So first of all, I want to thank you, Mike, and Peter for hosting this again, and to all of my colleagues in government for participating. And yay, Tish and Scott, for getting on the Zoom call with us. Just a couple things. I don't want to repeat what's been said. I think all of us at the state level are overwhelmed with unemployment, pandemic unemployment, the varying permutations of that, the fact that even people who have filed and their applications have been approved and they're logging in on a weekly basis to say that they're looking for a job, doing what they need to do, still have not gotten a check, and it's been 5, 6, 7 weeks for some of them. And that is really just untenable. And it's something certainly that I brought to the attention of the leadership in the Assembly, and I know my colleagues have done the same. The nursing home issue, as Dan mentioned, I've been working very closely with Dan on Cobble Hill, and it's really brought into stark relief some of the inequities in the way that the nursing homes were treated vis-a-vis the hospitals. It was just much harder for them to get staffing, much harder for them to get PPE. Not a lot of people paying attention to them because there was a lot of chatter in the ozone about acute care, all the people in hospitals on ventilators, which is clearly extremely important and clearly shocking to the conscience in a lot of ways, but the nursing homes weren't getting some of the attention I think they probably needed. And I think that we'll see after the investigations are done that we will find that there are a lot of ways that we can improve the way we as New York work with and help our nursing homes who are caring for our most vulnerable citizens, and make sure that we look at these congregate care settings. If you've been watching Rachel Maddow, she's been on a tear about this, and it is something that is not a problem unique to New York or unique to Brooklyn or to Cobble Hill. There are now several nursing homes with many more deaths, for example, as a result of COVID-19. And so they all need some help, and they all need our attention. And we're looking to improve things as opposed to just being critical. We need to be critical of the things we need to be critical of. We also need to be supportive of the work that they do and make it easier for them to do the work that we as a society have asked them to do. I also want to just, mention, obviously the small business issue is a big issue in my district as well. I think we're all struggling with ways to help small businesses. I'm pleased that the Chamber of Commerce, the Brooklyn Chamber, has started a new fund that will give low interest loans or no interest loans that's supported by various donors to small businesses. And I think that will make a difference. But obviously what we need really is federal money coming into the system to support. Scott Stringer was right. So was the Attorney General. There's no way that we can allow our small businesses to go down. It's not only critical to our economy, it's critical to our quality of life and our safety. When we have businesses that are functioning, our streets are safer, there's more eyes on the street, they are part of our community, and they really make a difference in the lives of our community. And we're just seeing a lot of difficulty for them, and we're working on various ways. I know Brian talked about one of the bills that he's been working on with regard to supporting both residential rents as well as small businesses. So, I support all of those efforts, and I'm working with a lot of my colleagues on that. I'm also hatching another idea which isn't ready for distribution because it hasn't hatched yet. That might be of help to our small businesses also. And I just want to say one thing about student loans that Tish mentioned about the work her office has done. In the last CARES Act, there was a suspension of federal loan payments. If you have a federally guaranteed student loan, they will not make you pay that until September. So it's basically suspended through September. And in one of my recent newsletters, I had a lot of the links with the information about that, but I'm certainly happy to push that back out again if that's helpful to people, because that's a really critically important issue as well for so many people. And just to say that if you have questions, we really do want to hear from you. The staff is working extraordinarily hard, as is every elected official staff. It's simonj@nyassembly.gov, and my phone number is 718-246-4889. And we will be working on getting masks and hand sanitizer to more people now. Most of public housing has the hand sanitizer. They have the masks. Cleaning supplies are a big issue, so I brought that up to the leadership's attention too. There's a way that we can get cleaning supplies, because really nobody can get, it's like a supply chain issue, and people just can't get the detergent to clean the floors. And I know that that's been an issue that's been raised to me by public housing, as well as the food issues. So we're working on all of those issues. Please let us know what we can do to help you. And also if you have any ideas or any ways that you think we can be of greater help, or we can help our neighbors in need. I'm just incredibly grateful for all of the work that so many members of the community have done to help support our restaurants by providing food to the hospital staff and to the emergency rooms and to each other. And so it's a really great way that the community has stepped up. And we have an incredibly creative community in this district. And I know that we put our heads together, roll up our sleeves, we'll be able to find other ways that we can help make this time, which is so difficult, easier for people. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joanne. The next person that we're going to hear from is Julie Menon, and she works with the census. That is such an important thing for this neighborhood and for the entire state. Julie?
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you all, and I'm really thrilled to be here with CB6. I chaired CB1 in Manhattan for 7 years, so it's great to be back with so many fellow community board members. So I am now running the census for New York City, and I really want to emphasize that at this time with COVID, we obviously in New York City are the epicenter of COVID. It's really a stark reminder of why the census is so important. It's funding for our hospitals. In 2010, only 62% of New Yorkers self-responded to the census. In Brooklyn, the numbers were even lower at 55%. And I mention that because if we had had a better response rate, quite frankly, in 2010, we would have had more funding for our hospitals right now during COVID. So where are we right now as a city? I'll give you the numbers for Brooklyn. We're at 43.4% of Brooklynites have responded to the census. That compares to nationwide 57.3%. So we're still significantly behind in Brooklyn. Other parts of the city, I want to be honest, are doing better than Brooklyn. And so we really need to increase these numbers. So that is why I wanted to join you tonight. We are doing many different things. We're phone banking, we're doing textathons. With the fact that a third of New Yorkers lack access to digital, that makes it obviously much more difficult. And so that is why we're doing a lot with phone banking. I do want to say for all the elected officials that are on the call, thank you so much. We really need your help. If you can please continue to send blast emails out about filling out the census. For all the community board members that are on there, there's a very simple way that you can help. First of all, if you've not filled your census out, you just go to my2020census.gov, and while I'm speaking, literally you could be done in several minutes with it. Most importantly, if you can post on your social media, if you have social media, that would be really helpful as well. So I know the time is short, so I will stop there and just urge everyone to please make sure to take the time to fill the census out. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, Director Menon or Commissioner Menon. I'm not sure. I know were the commissioner previously. And next up, I think we're going to go to Brad, then Kevin Parker, then Assemblymember Ortiz, as I'm getting various texts of who's there, and I can't see the whole crowd, but those are the next three. So we'll go to Brad.
Thanks very much, Mike, and I appreciate that these are challenging, and I really want to appreciate everybody who's being so patient. We've got our superintendent and John Jarenko from NYP Methodist, and folks really want to hear from them. So, but obviously there's a lot of critical information, and truly thank you so much for the work you're doing to lead on the census, and I'll just urge everybody to go ahead and fill it out, but then maybe get involved in the text banking or the ways of getting other New Yorkers to do it. It is critical. I want to underline what our state electeds have said about supporting small businesses. A lot of you have reached out, and I just feel like that is so utterly critical for saving our neighborhood. We have Dan Wiley on the call from Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez's office. She chairs the House Committee on Small Business, but unfortunately, I know the GOP have really been holding hostage the small business support we really need. We're trying to do what we can at the state and local level. We've got some legislation that will suspend sidewalk cafe fees, and cap seamless fees. And I see an idea that's been in the chat and other people have talked about, you know, it's great to have Prospect Park West open finally for pedestrian access, and we got to get more streets open. But from Wuhan to Atlanta, they're opening up streets for restaurants to put some of their tables out on the streets. And when we get to that next phase where we can't be in big numbers back in those restaurants, finding a way to do that not only will help us feel human this summer, but could also actually be a way of providing some genuine revenue to those businesses. So that's something I'm going to be pushing for in the council. On one set of very small businesses, freelancers and independent contractors and folks who are self-employed, we're having a town hall tomorrow night that I'm going to paste in the chat, which is going to talk about how to apply for pandemic unemployment assistance if you are a freelancer and independent contractor, and provide some other special resources as well. So please feel free to join that. Scott talked about how bad the budget is, and we had our budget hearing today. I'm not going to do a long discourse on it, but we are fighting hard to figure out how we can minimize the pain and the cuts to our schools, to our summer youth programs. You know, and one thing I'll say, I really appreciate the NYPD officers out there risking their health. But, you know, we've got a hiring freeze on teachers and social workers and, you know, mental health counselors and parks workers. But so far, the mayor has exempted the NYPD from the hiring freeze, which means next year we would hire 2,300 new police officers. Let's serve the ones we have well and make sure they have the PPE and support they need. We don't need to spend $200 million on 2,300 new officers. We could put that money into our schools and our summer youth programming instead. There'll be other ways that we can do work in the budget. I see a bunch in the chat on safe streets, and I'm going to stick around so people we have time at the end to talk about that. I will be glad to talk a little more about it when we get to the end, but it could be a long conversation. I also think we've got some work to do on getting the balance right on social distancing compliance. I know people on this call care a lot about it. I know you've seen the videos of differential NYPD enforcement in different communities across the city. Personally, I don't think the NYPD are the best suited. I think what we really need is like a core of public health outreach workers recruited from every community. So people that look like you and share your language, share your values, can communicate about why it's necessary to stay separate, to save lives. You know, probably the best place I saw social distancing compliance all the last week was at the Grand Army Plaza Green Market, where you might have thought it was impossible to achieve. It's such a thing of crowds, and yet with good design, with clear rules, and with a common community of values, they've turned something that's usually a crowd into something that's really pretty safe. So I want to think more with you guys about how we do that, because even once we start to be able to move out of our homes, we're still going to have a year when we have to do this social distancing compliance. Two more quick items, and actually Teresa just dropped one in the chat about organics collection suspension. You may have heard that curbside organics collection is something that has been suspended as a budget cut. That like breaks my heart, and I know for many of us in this community, we're the best composters in all of New York City. And we're reducing hundreds of thousands of tons of solid waste at a time when the climate crisis is affecting the planet. But unfortunately, that program has not yet had the citywide effectiveness that we need it to have. We do it great here, but because it's not mandatory or incentivized, it has not been cost effective across the city. It should be saving us money, but instead it's costing us about $25 million a year. So I think we're going to have to suspend it, but we're trying to do two things to save the program going forward. One is to make sure that there are locations around our community where people can bring their organics, kind of community compost facilities, like at the green markets and other places, so we can stay in the habit. But then also, Antonio Reynoso is moving forward a bill that would make organics recycling mandatory, so people in every community would have to do it. That's not going to go into effect during the COVID crisis, but let's use this moment to say the only way to get a cost-effective program is to make sure it is genuinely citywide and that everybody's got to participate. So more on that to come. And then lastly, I saved my big thing for the end because I'm very excited. As some of you know, I've been saying a lot that clapping for our essential workers at 7 is great, but we've got to do better than that because that does not provide them the sick leave or PPE or workplace protections or pay or dignity that they deserve. And so I'm one of the co-sponsors of a package of legislation in the City Council called the Essential Worker Bill of Rights that would provide sick leave and workplace protections. And I'm delighted to say the sponsor of that package, of a similar package in Congress, is none other than Senator Elizabeth Warren. And tomorrow at 1 p.m., she's going to be joining me and some New York City essential workers for a digital town hall, standing with essential workers. And if you guys want to join, I've just dropped the chat in the box, and I'll drop it again when I can write what it is. We would love to have you there. I think we all know that after this is over and the cheering and clapping is done, we've got just such a collective debt to the people who are in our nursing homes and our ERs, who are the ones stocking food on the shelves, who are doing the delivery work, who are doing the warehouse work. And we can show up and do better for them. Those are jobs that we have not honored previously with anything like what you would recognize essential work as. and we can do better. So I hope you'll join us tomorrow. It's really great to be here. I'll stick around to the end, so on some of these other questions, I'm glad to weigh in if people have. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Brad. We're next going to hear from State Senator Kevin Parker. Senator, make sure you're unmuted, that there's no red flash through your microphone.
I'm not seeing the senator now.
Okay, he must have left then. I apologize. Mike, who's next then?
Assemblymember Ortiz is still on the line, I think. Okay. I don't know. Is he still? I can't.
Not seeing him now.
Okay, so I guess we can move over to as Councilman Lander mentioned, the chair of the Small Business Service Committee in the House of Representatives.
Oh, you know what? Felix is here in the participants. I'll let him in while, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Dan.
Felix, can you hear us now?
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Sorry, I found you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. Thank you to all the members of the community board, my colleagues. I'm just going to be very brief and quickly. I would like to inform that we give mask to NYCHA. It's going to be a mail order directly to the NYCHA resident on mask and glove. And we also continue to dealing very hotly and very sadness with people who passing away, which have no resource, no financial at all. We've been working with HRA to ensure that they will be able to cover the cost as well as with the state. I also would like to re-emphasize the unemployment issue that is really one of the harder hit. We're getting about probably 20 to 40 phone calls a day in my office, leaving messages, and we're returning and trying to help these people. We also distribute some masks for the EMSs and the EMT. Last week, Friday, we gave glove, a mask to crossing guards and also to some of the food workers services in our school. People trying the tendency to forget them. It's important to recognize them as well. We also donated a total of 10,000 masks to my memories as well as to NYU Hospital and 5,000 masks that went directly to a double clinic. And we also working, City Council Brad Lander mentioned his Bill of Rights. We also working on a piece of legislation to secure the frontliners regarding about unemployment, vacation days, sick days, and so on, to make sure that they will be protected as well. And that is a bill that I just started working with 2 days ago, and I'm going to be the sponsor of that bill, and I will be able to give more details as soon as we finalize that legislation. With that, I would like to say thank you to everybody, and just remember to remind people that the only way that we can reopen if everybody will be part of the solution by wearing their mask. They're protecting themselves, but they're saving my family as well and theirs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Felix.
Thank you. As previewed preemptively, I was going to go to Dan Wiley from Congresswoman Velasquez's office next.
Hey, thanks,
Mike.
Dan. So Congresswoman Velasquez has been working on oversight. As a lot of people know, the CARES Act had a 3.5, not a fourth package. We're working on the fourth package now, but the last what was passed was 3.5. So it's kind of an interim replenishing funding for the Paycheck Protection Program and the disaster, the economic injury disaster loan grant, because we turned it into a grant, which has been overtaxed. Again, that looks like that is frozen for now because there's so many applications in, and we're working on the fourth package to replenish it and also try to make fixes to it to make it work better for small businesses. There's a lot of restrictions on how you spend the money, and really we need the most flexibility possible. So the Congressman has been vigorously negotiating on that, as well as making sure that the next package includes assistance for states and local governments, and in proportionate to those also that have been so impacted, like New York, obviously. In the last package, she was able to get more funding for smaller banks, some of the CDFIs, the community development financial institutions, credit unions, some of the smaller banks that are better able to push these loans out to, forgivable loans, out to smaller and micro businesses, and also more money dedicated to the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which you don't have to go through a bank and have a good relationship with, but you can get directly through SBA. And so $50 billion earmarked specifically for economic injury disaster loan through SBA supports $350 billion in those loans and grants. Even so, it's now look like the SBA has frozen that application for now. We want to replenish it. Also, of course, you know, the last version of the bill was held up. Democrats were holding out for including state and local aid and aid for hospitals. And so 75 billion. So we were able to hold out for a week. And then actually we didn't get the state and local, but we did get the 75 billion for hospitals. And so again, we want to make sure we get the state and local in the next. Also, the congresswoman, you know, has led a bipartisan group of 24 members in Congress to get the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, asking for additional funds in the CARES Act to be allocated to nursing homes. There is some money that should be going, but we want to get more in there. You know, just an editorial note on Cobble Hill, there's a lot of news of like it had a high number of deaths from COVID, but those are presumed deaths. So if you look at the 52 people who died, 50 of them, for 53, 3 of them were confirmed with a test having COVID. The other 50 were presumed COVID, which shows the low rate of testing that nursing homes had. I do know they're getting testing coming in from the state finally on Thursday. And it also doesn't tell the story of people who have recovered. So there are people in nursing home, more than 50 had COVID and recovered. And I think that side of the story isn't told. So I think it's very important for the state and the governor's office in particular to recognize that they should be working with providers that are finding ways to manage this crisis, just like hospitals, which have public and private ones, and work with them and associations like Leading Age to actually figure out how to be better prepared and how to really support them. And I applaud Lincoln and his work in the mayor's office to dedicate and have a contract to actually get staff there, which is what they've needed all along, PPE and staff. Other items, the Congresswoman Velasquez has submitted the Excluding Pandemic Unemployment Compensation from Income Act on April 30th, which she wants to get in the next CARES Act, which would exempt the weekly $600 that Americans get in pandemic unemployment from being considered part of their income that could disqualify them, say, for SNAP or temporary assistance for needy families. So that's something that she's introduced.
And she is the third daughter for me.
Was that the governor?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Not on mine. I'm not playing.
Okay, so then the last thing is she did sign on to the Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act of 2020.
Dan Freeze. Dan, are you still there? Okay.
I think we lost him.
All right. Well,
so we're going to go
Dan
then. We'll go then
Sorry.
to John Jarenko from Methodist Hospital, and then if Dan comes back on, we'll hear the conclusion of his remarks.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for having me. Once again, it's John Jarenko. I'm Director of Government Affairs and Grants for New York Presbyterian and a Park Slope resident. So a few things I just wanted to update you on tonight. First, it is National Nurses Week, so I wanted to thank all of our nurses for the heroic efforts that they do every day.
I apologize, John. If you're not speaking, please make sure you're on mute. Otherwise, things you play on your phone are coming across and interrupting the speaker.
Thank you, Peter. Overall, our numbers for New York Presbyterian, including Brooklyn Methodist, continue to decline. At the height of the surge in mid-April, we were about 2,500 inpatients at our facilities, and right now we were about 1,349 inpatients as of this morning. The patients in our intensive care unit beds also is declining, but that decline is slower, which is to be expected. Those patients are sicker. We have about 460 across our system right now. On the good news side is we've discharged more than 8,000 patients who are back home and are healthy back home. We have, right now what we're working on is when we can be able to reopen, and for those patients who have delayed their care, how can we bring them back in and have their care delivered safely and successfully? So we are talking to our hospital partners around New York City and in Westchester, talking to our hospital associations, talking to the state about how we do this safely so that our patients are protected and our workers are protected. We have programs for our workers who are experiencing either financial hardships or need some mental health counseling or services like that. So we have some programs for employees who may need additional services. One thing that, as someone who gets up and runs in the park, you see a lot of people up there, and social distancing is still an issue. I know lots of people are good about wearing masks and maintaining distance, but as this concept of reopening comes back up, we want to make sure that we get the message across that people need to continue to observe social distancing. Please wear a mask, please wash your hands while you're out there. We don't want to see a rebound in the number of cases as they go up. So with that, I can conclude and answer any questions that folks may have.
Are there any questions for John in the chat that I haven't seen? Or okay, John, thank you so much for coming out the second straight month, and for all the work that you guys at New York Brooklyn Presbyterian are doing right now.
Thank you, and I want to thank everybody on the community board, and I also want to extend my thanks to our elected officials, whether at the city level, the state level, or the federal level, for all their support that they're giving New York Presbyterian right now. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Next up, I think we were going to go to the District 15 Superintendent, Anita Scott, who has joined us for the second straight month. And thank you, and take it away.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. It's a real honor to be here. I'm going to be brief. I know you have such a packed agenda, and you have so many people who have so many important things to say, but I am going to touch upon a couple of things, one of which Brad alluded to as we got on this evening, and that is just today it was announced that teachers and students will be able to return to using Zoom. They will be using it through a platform that it links it through the Department of Education, but Zoom was without question extremely popular, extremely comfortable for people, and we are delighted that they will be able to do that. They have gone through rigorous responses to ensure that there is security. Letitia James talked about that, and we are grateful for her support with this. This was something that parents and teachers were really pushing for. It is a comfortable platform. People are used to it. And so they will be returning to Zoom shortly, very shortly. That's one piece. The second piece that I would like to talk about is the grading policy. I know that this is a concern for many parents, and if you will indulge me, I would like to just give you a very brief overview. So starting with grades pre-K and 3K, we have no 3K in District 15, but pre-K, there are no grades for pre-K, so please don't worry about your little ones. Pre-K is a socialization and exposure to language and experience, and even on distance learning, if you look at some of the work that's being done with our pre-K, it's astonishing and exciting, and our teachers have gone out of the way to do amazing things. Kindergarten through grade 5, there are 2 grades that are being given. N, which is needs improvement, and MT, which is meeting standards. This does not mean that we are looking exclusively at remote learning. We are looking at a holistic approach of the whole year that your child has had. Please remember that your children were in school for 6 months already. And so it is not just about the child who's having a hard time with remote learning. It is about the holistic view, about mastery of standards, and it is, as the Chancellor has said, about flexibility and compassion and understanding. We want all of our children to succeed, and this is about defining what our kids need to be successful, so that when they return to school, we know immediately to hit the ground running with the supports they need. In grades 6 through 8, there are 3 criteria, and I'm going to call it up. I would have thought I would have it. Here we go. In grades 6 through 8, there are 3 criteria. There is meet standards, needs improvement, and what is called course in progress. Course in progress simply means that the child has not handed in sufficient information for them to be given a grade as yet. Course in progress is not a successful grade. The other 2 are needs improvement and meet standards. And so I want to be clear about the needs improvement because it's it's vague to people. It does not mean the child is failing. It means that there is an area of growth that is needed. And so we will be talking to parents and families at the school level for children who get needs improvement. Now, I also want to add, because I think it's exceptionally important, that there has not been a defined summer school policy as yet. So children who get needs improvement, this does not necessarily mean that they are going to go to summer school. For kids who get course in progress, they will have the opportunity through projects and other work to begin to complete that work before June. For children who do not complete the work before June, summer school may be an option for them. In terms of the high school level piece, they also have the priority of doing the numerical grading that they would have been doing. However, it is a little more complex in that parents, like they are doing in many of the universities and colleges, including CUNY, will have the opportunity to determine if they are not comfortable with the grade, the numeric grade that their child will be getting, they will be able to reach out to the school and get basically the equivalent of a pass-fail concept so that they can get credit, but not a numeric grade. This is a concern if you are worried about your child's GPA and getting into colleges and things like that. This is an option for parents. It does not have to be determined by June. It will go into the next semester. So these are things that you can get more information about. Do not hesitate to reach out to your school, and do not hesitate to reach out to my office. And the last thing I want to say, 2, if I may be indulged very quickly. One is that It was announced today by the chancellor to all of us that teachers and principals and everybody are going to receive mental health support training. We are dealing with all children who are children of trauma. This is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And we want to make sure that everybody is prepared to provide support. So guidance counselors, teachers, principals will be getting training and support for themselves and for children as we go forward with this. And then the very last thing, if I can put in a plug, tomorrow night at 4 o'clock, or tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock, we will be holding the first of weekly Soup with the Soup forums in District 15. And if you would like to come and ask questions there, I'm happy to answer them for you. So again, 4 o'clock, please reach out to my office, askop@schools.nyc.gov. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anita. We're also now going to hear from David Nussbaum from the Department of Buildings.
Just trying to unmute. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Councilman. And really, thank you, everyone. I see 83 people still on after an hour and a half. That's really a great testament to this board, I gotta say. So very briefly, because I know there's still more people to go. It's the Department of Buildings has been working very hard to continue as many services as we can during this difficult time. We really made a great effort to put a lot of our available services online as best as possible. Of course, we're still out there in the field with our inspectors, performing thousands and thousands of inspections. As you know, we're implementing what we need to do in terms of the governor's order under the pause. 90% of construction sites have paused, and we've done our part also to make sure that sites that are closed are safe, and certainly we're actively inspecting sites that are open to make sure that they're complying. We have on our site a tremendous amount of information with regard to service changes, with regard to specific things that contractors and others and professionals need to do during this time in terms of alternative ways of interacting with the department. We have a map on our site which lists what sites are deemed to be essential. So you can easily go on the site, you can plug in a address, you can just click on, figure out basically what your geographic area is, and you could click on it and get the information with regard to the construction sites that are allowed. Construction sites also, Mike gave me a couple of questions earlier that were brought up in terms of how we're monitoring health and safety. We've given out guidance that we've obtained from others with regard to best practices for keeping safe on job sites, including social distancing and ability to wash your hands and equipment and other things like that. So that's something we certainly have passed along. Again, with regard to essential sites, we do have the map and everything else, but if people feel that there's work going on that should not be going on, they certainly could call 301. You could contact the board office, and they can get in touch with myself and my staff, and we'll check that out very quickly. Generally within 24 hours, we'll inspect those type of conditions. Again, I don't want to take up too much time, so if people have specific questions, please let me know now, or through the board, and we'll definitely get back to you within by tomorrow.
Sounds good. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. Yeah, we might have a few more specific questions. Thanks for looking over those ones I sent over earlier. Sticking with city agencies, I think Keith Bray is on the call, the Borough Commissioner for DOT.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, Keith.
Hey,
Yes.
how you doing?
Good.
Good. So thank you for allowing me to join this call. I'm very happy to participate in it, being both a resident of CB6 as well as obviously working with the board closely for so many years. What I want to talk about very briefly, and Lincoln Ressler spoke about a little bit at the beginning of the phone call, is about the plan that the mayor and the city council jointly announced to implement up to 100 miles of open streets. Very briefly, the guidelines are proposing organizations must have strong ties to the community, and that's basically we're asking for that so that you can demonstrate your capacity to manage an open street and provide a staffing plan if needed. Open streets should not be proposed on bus routes or truck routes or hospital corridors. And just to be clear on hospital corridors, that's not a specific designation, but if it's a roadway where emergency services is going to a hospital, that would be a street that we wouldn't want you to be on. So for instance, obviously, say for Methodist Hospital, 7th Avenue between, 7th and 6th Street would not be a good place for this concept. And even roads leading up to that wouldn't be good either along 7th Avenue because obviously emergency services are using that. And the same for 8th Avenue behind it. Also, if you come up with a proposal, which is in the link to the letter that was sent around to a lot of people, a lot of groups, you can propose any number of days to have this. You can have them 7 days a week. You can have them on recurring days, like every other Saturday or like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever, however you want to do it. And that is what we will hold you for continuously for the duration of the program. The closure schedule should take use of the street for deliveries. And so one of the signs that's on the street is that it asks for 5 miles an hour because even though these are open streets, they're sort of shared in the sense that we're not closing them off completely. We are allowing local traffic to go on these streets. Obviously, they should only be driving 5 miles an hour. That's what the sign is saying. And so far for the streets we have that have been announced, from what I've heard and from other boroughs as well. I know I've seen Pleasant Park West and Parkside here in Brooklyn, but from other boroughs, we seem to be getting good compliance with that. And the barriers will also obviously have to be removed from emergency vehicles, essential deliveries, the sex to ride, et cetera. So they need to be able to get on the block when they're needed. So we did receive the letter from Community Board 6 to Commissioner Trottenberg about the announcement and the plans again for administration and city council to go with this program. And so we are definitely happy again to get input from anyone about locations. The way the process works is that we study them. Initially, DOT looks at them. Then after we look at them, there's sort of an interagency process within the city that reviews them as well. NYPD looks at it, the fire department looks at it, I'm sure sanitation looks at it, some other agencies look at it also. And one other thing I want to clarify with partners, if you do volunteer, we want the partners to help set up and take down barriers. As the mayor made an announcement today, there's going to be some streets open in downtown Brooklyn, so I'm going to use the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership as an example, but this is for all our partners moving forward until we get those 100 miles. Basically, we're not asking you to keep looking at them all day. We just want you to periodic check on the barriers throughout the day to make sure they're maintained in place and that any vehicle that needs access that has to move the barriers are restoring them. So a lot of it is just checking to make sure that the barriers are still up. You don't have to have someone there all the time for the duration of the program. And the hours are right now 8 to 8. This is a program that could change with feedback initiatives. So certainly that though these are the standards now, things can change at any moment when it happens. And I'm sure, again, because this was a joint announcement, I'm sure the city council both have given suggestions. We've gotten suggestions from a lot of city council members and elected officials. They're giving their feedback and we're getting back to them as well. So that's what I was saying, just briefly on DOT issues. Again, most of our operations are still down, not up yet. We are doing emergency and life-saving things to support our emergency services. We have begun a very light touch resurfacing program, literally like we're doing just one street in Brooklyn right now. But if you have any questions for DOT, my office, other member, Emily Raquelme, who's the new CB6 rep, obviously, board member Leo Branch, obviously as well. Many ways to reach out to DOT. and we are here to answer or help you with any questions or issues you may have at any time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. I think the next up would be Terrence from Con Ed, followed by Oscar, and I think that will then have been everybody.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you, everyone. Just wanted to check in, just let everyone know where Con Ed stands. We're not doing shutoffs for non-payment, no late payment fees. We're also encouraging people to, with our walk-in centers closed, to certainly encourage people to use my account online, and also to just make sure that, in the event that the payment plan is necessary, that people know that they have financial assistance and resources on the Con Ed website, which I will right now just push into the chat. So my number's on there as well. My email is kellyte@coned.com. My cell phone's on there as well. We're here to help with constituent issues, customer issues. We want to let people know that you certainly have a line to a troubleshooter here. Energy saving is going to be important from here on out. We also want to, as the Attorney General, as Tish mentioned, scam awareness is also extremely important in these times. People take advantage of a crisis. As Keith also said right then, a lot of our regular electric operations in Brooklyn have come to a halt. So emergencies, essential work, and critical facilities and infrastructure work to make sure that in CB6, it's been working with the cruise terminal to make sure that they have the power required for the possible temps hospital site there. Working with any of the affordable housing that's required, but mostly doing network work to make sure that we're prepared for the summer. And I just want to thank everyone for having us. If you need anything from Con Edison, again, I just put my information in the chat, and we're here to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terrence. Oscar from Senator Montgomery's office.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me? Okay. Oh, right, you can't respond. Sorry. Right now, just a few quick statements. Number one, Senator Montgomery moved her district office in the midst of this situation. Beginning of April, we moved. We are now in the Shirley Chisholm building at 55 Hanson Street. Same phone number, but we want to make sure that the safety of her staff and any constituents that come by to visit. We believe this is a better situation for us overall. For those of you who may know, Red Hook is about to lose its last bank branch. I sent the district manager a letter, forwarded him a copy of the letter Senator Montgomery sent to the head of the municipal credit union, asking them to look into Red Hook as a possible location to serve the residents, the businesses, and of course, you have a large night shift facilities over there. So that's in the heart of Community Board 6. We want to make sure you guys are aware of that. I would like to share that letter with anyone who's interested in it.
Oscar, I'll share it. I'll make sure to share it tomorrow.
No problem. Additionally, Senator Montgomery signed on to a letter asking for, unfortunately, the Summer Youth Employment Program, SYEP, was closed down for this upcoming summer, and she signed into a letter with other members of the state legislature urging the mayor to put that money towards families who are being negatively affected by the pandemic. Lastly, I guess anyone who needs to reach the senator, please feel free. I am a conduit. I am at ojonas at nysenate.gov. And Senator Montgomery wants to urge everyone to support your local businesses, to make sure that the individual flavor, so to speak, of every neighborhood. Reminder that a small business, you're supporting a family, not necessarily a huge corporation. So please treat yourself to ordering dinner, to purchasing a gift card for future use, or don't use it, consider it a donation. Or, and also if you're gonna order food, to please call the restaurant directly directly and don't necessarily use one of these services on the app because they sometimes take exorbitant fees, and that affects the small business as well. On behalf of the senator, I wish everyone well right now as we're dealing with this. I know we're all staring at our screens all day long, various Zoom meetings, other websites, etc., and keeping ourselves up to date with the internet. And just hopefully we get through this together, and hopefully soon we'll all see each other in an elementary school auditorium at a future meeting. So I guess that's it for me. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Oscar.
Thanks. I think that's basically everyone, right? Am I missing anyone? No, right? I don't think so. So you want to go, Peter and Brad?
Yeah, just thank everyone, and I really think it was great information. You know, I learned some things today, and you know, I like to think of myself as relatively connected from my almost daily email or text with Mike. But you know, we're here to help. Councilman Lander's office, any of the state assembly members that were on the call today, the community board office. If you have an issue that we think we can help with, contact us. If we aren't the right person, chances are that we know who is, and we will try and refer you to them so that, you know, they can try and solve your problem. So I thank all of the speakers for coming on today, especially Tish James, Scott Stringer, and all of the other elected officials. And I again urge you to stay well, stay socially distant, and we'll all come through this safely and happily.
And I'll just one more time thank my team who are working so hard through this crisis, and I'm really grateful for it. Megan Flynn, who you all know, who's just working with all of you, and also Julia Ehrman, who's on this call, and Naomi Dan. So it's a pleasure, Peter and Mike, to work with you and this whole team. You know, it's a hard time for democracy, but maybe more important than ever. So thank you guys so much.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Thank you.